Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today we have on our show a very good friend, Sara Gross. How you doing today, Sara?
I am great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so looking forward to this because I've got a little bit of a story for your story that I want to tell, and I can't wait to get to that part. But before that, you doing anything cool today? You sticking around the house?
Yep. Sticking around the house. It's a day off, which is great. So that means like puttering, cleaning, cooking, taking care of plants. The
Yeah.
usual.
I cleaned my office the other day because Lara, had me on hold forever. So
Yes.
that was always good. So some people have met you that our common crowd or whatever that's watching, but some haven't. So would you mind telling us about Sara Gross and the projects that you're working on?
Yes. Cut me off if I go too long.
You'd be great.
So, my name is Sara Gross, and those who do know me probably know me from the Michigan History Center. I've been around the Fledge for maybe a little over a year now, specifically with the StoryCorps project that we've been working on at the History Center, just to jog people's memories. But before I worked at the Michigan History Center, I actually had never even been to Michigan before. I moved here from Cleveland, Ohio, where I worked at the Cleveland History Center. So I've been in the history field for a very long time. And before that, I grew up in Maryland. So I've just moved all over the place, but always working on history and in museums. We may talk about this later, but I'm actually looking right now at my next move, which will take me out of Michigan, which I'm sad about, but to Maine, which is one of my favorite states. It's where my parents live right now. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. So I have some details that I like to gather.
Sure.
Do you mind telling us what city you were born and raised in? I know you said Maryland.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know where I was born, somewhere around where I grew up, but I grew up right outside of Columbia, Maryland, which is kind of halfway in between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. It's just like a pretty normal suburb, pretty boring.
So would I have taken a train through Columbia if I went from DC to Baltimore?
Probably not. Columbia is actually famous for being this sort of like planned suburb. So it was like completely planned out and designed to have these like little town centers that are all linked by roads. It's very odd, but they probably would not have designed it to have a railroad going through it. You would drive through it, maybe. You wouldn't really see it though if you were on the highway.
So would that be like an intentional community or some? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's interesting. Like when I mention it to, even when I'm out here in the Midwest and I bring it up, a lot of people who are interested in sort of like city planning and things like that know exactly what I'm talking about because it's like a textbook example of.
So I'm going to look into that more. I'm interested in learning more about that. And so did you go to Columbia High School?
I went to like a small school called Glenelg Country School. It's like out in the middle of nowhere. It's in a field. Probably suburbs now because that area was getting built up, but it was just like a small school.
All right. Yeah. So, well, thank you for answering that. And then we can talk about StoryCorps, we can talk about Maine, we can talk about all of that. Where would you like to start?
We could start with StoryCorps. StoryCorps is top of my mind. I just did another interview yesterday, and I love talking about StoryCorps.
Yeah, let's talk about StoryCorps. So, do you mind telling people, like you told me to tell people about it?
Sure, like the elevator pitch or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So StoryCorps is a national nonprofit. They're based out of Brooklyn, New York. And what they do is they travel around the country collecting and recording these 40-minute conversations between two people who know each other. The reason they do that is to show the value of listening to one another. Like, what can we learn if we just sit down for 40 minutes uninterrupted, no cell phones, and just listen to each other? They're trying to foster connections between people, help us see what we have in common by sharing our stories. It's really a great mission. And so at the Michigan History Center where I work, we had the opportunity like a little under 2 years ago to partner with them as a story collection location here in Michigan, which is great because otherwise in Michigan, you'd have to wait until they bring their mobile bus out to our state to record your story. So we got all trained up. They actually sent like people from the company out to the museum to train our staff on like how to record a top-notch interview with great audio quality. So that was great. And then we just started doing these interviews with people, mostly in Lansing. And all of these interviews that we collect get archived at the Library of Congress American Folklife Center, which is really cool. And they also get archived at the Archives of Michigan right here in the state. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing.
And I have 2 stories archived, one with my daughter interviewing me and one with me interviewing Thomas, who was on our show about electric vehicles and all of that.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of interviews from the Fledge with all different people, which has been, for me, one of the absolute highlights of working on StoryCorps.
So we, I was really proud when you came to us and said, hey, do you want to do this with us? And I was really proud of the response that we got from the community, because I think we got some good ones in there.
Absolutely.
And I also wanted to tell you that when I decided to do Every Damn Day, some people know that I just woke up one day and started doing it that day. It was fail forward fast, for sure. But it was really motivated with how you were collecting the stories. And I mean, almost our time frame is in the same thing. It's 2 people interacting, just having a kind of a natural conversation. And I was really motivated, I can say by StoryCorps, but I'm going to say by you, because you brought that to us. You made that happen. You made that connection. And I give you a lot of credit for what I'm trying to do here with Every Damn Day. And you got me thinking about recording stories and getting it out there. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. That makes me happier than you could even know. That is exactly the impact that I hoped this kind of project would have. And I have to say, I was very excited when you responded to my email and were excited to work with us. So that goes both ways.
Oh, that's awesome. And we've got a comment from the crowd. Sean is saying, I would love to record with her, but is StoryCorps, are you still doing recordings? Can people still schedule?
Question. So our contract with StoryCorps is coming to an end at the end of this year. We're going to keep, we're actually starting our own program at the History Center, which was kind of the reason that we partnered with StoryCorps in the first place, was to learn best practices and sort of like get our system down. But at the end of this year, we are ending our contract with StoryCorps. We'll be starting our own program, which I think is going to be called something like the Real Story Lab or something like that. So there will be ongoing opportunities to record with us. But if she wants to get in touch with me, if she can record before the end of the year, I can definitely get her in under the StoryCorps banner.
Okay. So Sean, I'll send you some information, or I'll share your information with Sara, and we'll get something out to you. But yeah, you would be able to talk about your book and your relationship with your mother and all of that. So Sean has a YouTube channel, everybody, that tells the story of her journey with her mother's dementia and Alzheimer's and all of that. It's a great channel. So, all right. So we got the StoryCorps kind of out of the way. Mm-hmm. What's going on in Maine? Your parents are there.
Yeah, my parents are there. So during, COVID, everything changed. And so it became really apparent to me this past year that I really just want to live near my family. I haven't lived near anyone in my family for at least a decade. And I really, really miss it. Like, I love Lansing. It's amazing. I have great friends here, but I really miss being near family. So, we had this opportunity to start a business as a family. My parents are very recently retired, and they're not the kind of people that just want to sit around, that they are doers, they're entrepreneurs, they like really want to do something. And so this was a great opportunity for us to start something new together. And for me, my job at the History Center was really, really focused on doing things in person. I was in charge of planning events. I was in charge of, managing the volunteers that would come into the building every day, going out and recording StoryCorps interviews, within 3 feet of other people. And in March, when COVID hit, all of that went away. So my job is nothing like what it was when I got hired. It's nothing like it was 9 months ago. And that makes it a really good time for me to move on to something else. I don't feel like I'm leaving the History Center in a lurch, because I'm not really doing what I was hired to do. And it just seemed like a good time for a transition. So I'm gonna go to Maine and start a business with my parents.
I think, oops, sorry. Getting a little bit of lag on your side, but we'll trudge through it, okay? The 20 years ago, everyone was writing out their visions. I gotta pause for a second. We okay? Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're freezing up a little bit, but that might be my internet.
We're having a little technical problem. Internet problem. I can't tell if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you.
We're going back and forth.
You can't hear me, I'm guessing.
It's okay. We'll keep rolling.
I can hear you.
Okay. What I was saying is that no, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
In 2020, coming up to 2020, everybody had their vision kind of, Dubai 2020, New York 2020, all of these things. And kind of what it ended up doing was becoming a focal point in everybody examining themselves, not necessarily, and where they're at, not necessarily some future vision of where we were going. I am completely losing Sara here.
Oh no, I can still hear you and see you.
Hey, say something to me, Sara.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It seems like it's back now. We were frozen for a minute. So, what is the business? Can you talk about that, or is that?
Oh yeah. We're actually, no, it's not a secret. We are fully public. We have a website and we've been doing interviews and stuff. So the business is called the Maine Tasting Center, and essentially what it is an education center that focuses on the food and drink industries in Maine. And so for people who aren't familiar with Maine, Maine is a very agricultural state. So there's a lot of different sort of like major agricultural crops. There are also more like wild type crops like blueberries that are huge there. And then, of course, you have the coastal industries. So you have lobstering and aquaculture. Maine is also a very entrepreneurial state. So you have lots and lots of breweries, cheesemakers, people who are making all kinds of amazing products. And what we're trying to do is create one central place where people from out of state, but also people in the state, can go to learn about those industries. What are the struggles that they're facing? What are the successes that they're experiencing? Who are the producers? Meet the producers. Where can you find their products, either in Maine or in your home market? And to do all of that, we're working with the state level organizations that represent all those different industries. So the site that we're on has a couple different buildings. We have an exhibit hall where we can talk about all that stuff. We have sort of like, it's not really a restaurant, it's like a tasting room, I guess, where you can go and you can try all the different products. And then we have a classroom building where we can, teach classes how to work with these products. We can do, tasting so that you can try things from different producers, all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty excited about it. Can you still hear me? Oops. Looks like Jerry is gone. It is just me.
I don't know who. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You disappeared for a second.
Okay. Yeah, you've been going in and out too, so I don't know. That's messed up a few minutes there, so that's okay.
I can start from the beginning if you want.
Well, we got to start from the main part. I'm sorry, Maine as in the state.
Sure.
Where you were saying what the company was, and then you said something about what if people don't know about Maine, it's a kind of central to that. So somewhere in that area would be great. But I don't know what the company is.
All right, I'll start from the beginning. The company is called the Maine Tasting Center, and it is an education center that focuses on the food and drink industries in Maine. And I think this is where I was going. So for people who aren't super familiar with Maine, it's a very agricultural state. So there's a lot of people growing all kinds of stuff. Potatoes is a big crop in Maine, but all kinds of stuff. There are also the coastal industries. There's lobstering and aquaculture and all of that. And then, of course, Maine is a very entrepreneurial state. That's like one of the things that made me want to move there. So you have tons and tons of groups that are making beer, making wine, making cider, making cheese, anything, foraging mushrooms, anything that you can imagine. There are communities in Maine doing it. And my family is just like super excited about that. We're big eaters. We love talking to the producers. So that was kind of our impetus for starting this. But at the Maine Tasting Center, we educate about those industries in a couple of different ways. We have an exhibit hall where we work with the state level organizations that represent these different food industries to sort of convey their educational message. What is it that they want the public to know about them? We have a tasting room where people can go to taste products from the different industries and learn about the producers who made them. And then we have a classroom building where people can, get a little bit more hands-on and take classes in a more interactive way. So this is very relevant to my interests, but also I'm hopeful that it will be a useful thing for Maine's food community to sort of bring all of these educational messages from all the different industries together in one place where people can go to learn about them.
That sounds so awesome. And I knew a little bit about Maine being, pretty innovative and I'm not going to say this word right. Ingenuity. I don't know what the right word, but they suffer from that. See, I can't find my words because I was flustered. The crowd, by the way, said they heard everything that you were saying, and that it's on my side. So I should be straight now because I switched Wi-Fi's in the middle. So
I'm sorry you all had to hear that twice, but thank you for listening.
No, it's you drove it home. But surprising to me as I'm talking through this with you, there's only 2 states I've never been in, and Maine is one of them. So I'm gonna have to come visit your center. Yeah,
absolutely.
When people can get close. So, but how's that work in COVID? What's that gonna look like?
That's a great question. So, Maine was not this past year. They were not really hit with COVID nearly as bad as lots of other places around the country. So it's been okay in terms of like the work we've been doing this year, getting things up and running. We have had to spend a lot of time really deliberating over our opening plan. At this point, we have many drafts of it, lots of contingency plans. But at this point, we've decided we're going to try to open in June, but keep an eye on how things are going. So if it doesn't look like, people being together in person is going to be a thing in June, we'll push it back.
Yeah, my current prediction of when the Fledge might open again is June.
Oh, okay, good. That's good to hear.
Same time frame. And then, when you said that it didn't get hit by COVID.
Not as bad. It did.
Not as bad. Yeah, I meant to say it that way.
Yeah.
It brought 2 things to mind. One is density. So do they have like big cities in Maine, but nothing, they don't?
Not to the extent that you do in other states. There's Portland, which is, I think, the biggest city in Maine, but it's still not a huge, huge city. Most of Maine is very spread out. It's very rural, wooded, not city at all, you know?
Yeah.
So that's part of it, is just that the population there is so low. And that COVID hit before the tourism season, which was helpful because that means that the population of the state is so much lower.
And then the other thing I thought, and you said entrepreneurship, but whenever anybody says Maine, I just think of people that just get stuff done for themselves as opposed to buying it. Like, you know, you got a choice between making this tool or buying it off Amazon. I see them, well, let's make it. It's going to be fun. And they kind of get that spirit that I always have wanted to create.
Absolutely.
Here at the Fledge or around, where we don't need to buy our solutions from other people. We can just make them. And if you make them, you become resilient. And maybe I need to study some data around that, because it sounds like Maine's kind of where it's at for that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And people figure out how to make things for themselves, but also how to make things for their community. So like one thing that I just really love about it is like the place where my parents live. There's a guy who does the coffee, and everyone in their area goes to him for coffee. There's a woman that does mushrooms, and everyone goes to her to buy their mushrooms. It's like a very community-centric sort of living situation. And people find the thing that they like to do and that they are good at, and they do it, and the community supports that. And people aren't so much, like you're saying, like going to Amazon to buy their coffee or whatever.
And in that whole process of getting their coffee and their mushrooms and all of that, they're having genuine conversations with each other. They're learning skills from each other. It's just, I'm coming to Maine.
Yes, come visit anytime. You have my email address. Let me know.
Yes. So StoryCorps and Maine, is there any other project you want to talk about, or you want to, I have a question for you.
Sure. So
you got a project though?
No, I was going to say, honestly, those two things are taking up all of my time.
I imagine they
I have two full-time jobs right now. I have my full-time job at the History Center and then helping my parents with this business. I'm here in Michigan, so I can't be quite as hands-on as they are. So I'm just trying to do the things that I can do from over here and help them with that. It takes a lot of time.
I know from our previous conversations, you're really passionate about history and recording history. And I think even, building equality and equity in those stories. We spent a lot of time making sure that we were reaching hard to include everybody in the stories. And so the stories, the history, and being with your parents, how would you sum up like your mission? What's your personal mission? Something like that.
That's a really good question. And I think stories I don't have like an eloquent answer to that, but I think that stories play a huge role in it. That's like one consistent thread through everything that I do and all of the projects that I take on, is that it's about getting beyond the surface level of things. So it's not just like, the food in Maine is lobsters. It's really getting beyond that and figuring out what the stories are that represent that topic. What are the stories of the individual people and the producers working in that industry in Maine? What are some of the stories of people who you maybe wouldn't think of first thing when you hear food industry in Maine? They're still working in that industry. Let's hear from them. Let's see what they're doing. And that's very similar to the work that I've been doing at the History Center and even at the Cleveland History Center before this, is just hearing from people and figuring out, what are the connections between all these stories? What can we learn from them? That kind of thing. So I think you're spot on. It is stories.
All right. So is there something you do every damn day to push that mission forward?
Yeah. So, something that I do every damn day is, I'm one of those people that can get very sucked into the work that I do and my mission. And I spend a lot of time on it, and a lot of emotional energy on it. So when I'm at home, I do try to spend some time just like turning off my brain, which is easier said than done. So I spend a lot of time every day cooking. every damn day. I spend a lot of time cooking because that for me is like a very good way to recharge and sort of help myself keep that energy to keep working, you know.
Are you an intuitive cooker, or do you get out the cookbook and go and you measure everything? And
definitely a mix of both. When I'm cooking, like cooking dinner, something like that, very intuitive cooker. I treat my fridge like it's an episode of Chopped. I'll like pull out, you know, these 5 things need to be gone out of my fridge. What am I going to make with them? But if I am baking, you know, like everybody else in the world, I've gotten very into baking bread during quarantine. So if I'm doing something like that, I have to follow a recipe because I'm not confident in that.
Well, baking's very much chemistry, right?
Yeah,
so you have to be precise.
I got a D in chemistry. So yeah.
So there's you know, we daisy chain our shows together. Mm-hmm. And yesterday on the show, we had a couple who was starting Wild Dawn Farms, Brian and Lindsay, and their question to you, and I knew this would fall into place. Their question to you is, what are some stories that need to be told that aren't being told? And maybe even how can we get them told? How can we get them recorded?
So that's a really, really good question. Thank you guys for that question. I think, and this is coming from a museum perspective, of course, but from my museum perspective, you know, what the stories that we tell in museums and in the news and things like that are stories of like exceptional things, like people who invented this, you know, the car, or, you know, did the first of something. And what we don't have a lot of is everyday experiences. Like, you know, there are millions of people out there and we want their stories. Like, I would like to hear those stories, not just the stories of presidents and famous people and people who you already know their names. So I think everyday stories of just what people are doing, like what they care about, how they live their lives, what they're working on. Just because they're not famous doesn't mean that they're not an important part of history. And that's, you know, what StoryCorps is all about, is just hearing what people think is important about their own lives. And I love that. It is so interesting to hear from people about that and to get to connect with them in that way.
And when you came to me and said, you want to make sure it's diverse, you want to make sure that we can include as many people as possible, you know, we love diversity. One, because of some very simple things, which is we need to restore, we need to have equality, we need to get equity in our communities. But it expands your brain, and it expands your life experiences. You know, the Fledge is smarter because you were here and Steve Manning was here and someone else was here, and you all have a different story, and you have your kitchens smell different, and the way you describe how the bread tastes are, you know, words that I might not have ever heard before. And we just get so much smarter with those stories. So I was so excited when you wanted to do that. How do you think that we did? Like, did you learn a lot from those stories? Was it just all over the place? And
yeah, but all over the place in a really, really good way. The interviews that we collected at the Fledge, I love. They're still some of my absolute favorite interviews. And I am so grateful to you for, you know, helping me build these connections with people that I probably would not have otherwise met in Lansing or in Michigan. And that was, you know, that was exactly the point, was to not just hear stories from people who look like me and who have the same thoughts as me. You know, that's not the story of Lansing. That's not the story of Michigan. So,
and I wouldn't feel comfortable like just naming someone who did a story, because I think that's for them to share. But I know that one of your favorites was that the older couple. His name was my name, her name was my name.
Yep, other way around. And yes,
and we still talk with them. They still come down and do stuff. They brought me some food. We given them some food, and I love the relationships that we made because StoryCorps attracted some new people. So
that makes me very happy. And you are correct. That is one of my favorite interviews that we have collected. That was a great one. Well, that makes me so happy.
Diversity is defined in so many ways, and we, label each other in so many ways, and we cut each other up in all these slices in so many ways. But diversity of thought, really gets emphasized, especially with the StoryCorps, because it's just audio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know who's sitting there. You don't know how old they are or what color they are or what their, gender is sometimes. But so I don't know how to define diversity sometimes, but there is a question, does Maine have a lot of diversity? Is it probably
That's
less
a great
diverse
question.
than the east side of Lansing?
I would say that in terms of like your sort of traditional like demographic discussions of diversity, not diverse at all. It is, I'm pretty sure, statistically one of the least diverse states in the country, which is like not a thing I'm particularly excited about. But that doesn't mean that there's no diversity. There is, like as you said, diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, and there are really, really interesting groups of people doing really interesting things. So there is diversity, but statistically, Maine is not. Yeah.
I've always heard a passion for a fight for social justice in your voice in our conversations. Are you losing me again?
You're a little fuzzy and a little jumpy, but I think we can make it.
Okay. So anyways, I think you'll get some opportunity out there to take some experiences from here. And even, everybody knows that I love Lansing and that I focus a lot on Lansing. I care about the whole world. I care about eliminating poverty everywhere. And I'm glad you bounced into Lansing and gave us some knowledge and some experiences. And it's okay to bounce again. We don't need to trap everybody in our community. We just need to play the hand we're dealt. And thanks for being one of the cards in that hand.
Yeah, I've loved my time in Lansing. I'm not excited to bounce out of Lansing. It's just, the way things worked out. If I could convince my parents to move here and start a business with me, that would be fine by me.
Well, Maine sounds wonderful. So go learn some stuff in Maine. And then when you feel like coming back, come back and teach us that stuff.
It's a deal.
All right. So tomorrow we got to keep daisy chaining. So tomorrow we have James Jordan. Melanin Misfits is their company. And what question would you like to ask them? I don't know their pronouns, so I'm going to stay generic for a second. What question would you like to ask them about anything?
I would like to know what is something about their product line. I assume it's a product line that most people don't know that they want people to know.
Yeah. So I don't know them yet, or I don't know them well yet, but it does look like oil treatments for hair and maybe growth serums. So yeah, we'll find that out from them tomorrow.
Excellent. I can't wait.
Now I got to flip this question on you and ask you. And I was when we talked before, I was thinking about asking you something about the historic museum, but I'll actually give, out of any of your projects, is there anything in the not museum, center, the Michigan History Center, is there something that, what's something that nobody knows, the deep secret? Do they keep, mummies in the basement that nobody knows about, or something about Maine and what you're doing out there? Give you a choice.
Oh man. All right. I have two for the History Center. One is maybe not that interesting, but it's close to my heart. And that is just that the Michigan History Center is not just the museum downtown with the tree growing out of it that you all went to for field trips in fourth grade. There's so much more that we do at the History Center. We have the Archives of Michigan. We're the official archives repository for the state. We run the historical markers program, all those green signs that you see all over the state that tell stories. We collect oral histories. We have field sites. We have other museums across the state. There's just like so many other things that we do, not just that one museum. And that breadth of everything that gets done is still so impressive to me. And I'm so happy to have been a part of it. And then the other thing that people don't know, it's not Mummies in the Basement, but in a back room that no one, who doesn't work there has ever seen, we do actually have a workshop where our staff makes products by hand based on images from the archives of Michigan, and we sell them to raise money for our education programs. So we have like a historic letterpress, which is so cool. And we like run off cards and prints and all kinds of stuff. So that was one thing I got to learn as part of my job, was how to run a letterpress. We have a puzzle press, like an industrial ginormous puzzle press. We make puzzles with images from the archives of Michigan. And people are always so, like, they just think it's so odd when they learn that some of our staff spend some of their staff time in this little workshop in the back of the building, just hand making products.
Yeah. I thought you were going towards like Impression 5 Museum has that huge workshop that they use to build all of their like exhibits and that.
Oh yeah, like a fabrication workshop. Yeah. Well, we do have one of those too. But I think that's like, at least in my mind, that's more standard for a museum. But we do have an artist who does cool things. He makes like giant resin pieces for the museum and fake food, and anything we need, he can make it. So
that's awesome. What a lucky artist to have, all those challenges and all that, and be able
he's
to
never bored, I'm sure.
So you said 2 for that. Did you have something for the other? Huh? No.
No, I think what I would say about that one I've already said, is just like how entrepreneurial and sort of self-driven people in Maine are.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of the show here. So I'm going to ask you, is there something you want to take us out with, a message that you want to say to everybody?
I mean, this is going to sound really cheesy, but I would just say, like, keep listening to each other, like keep giving each other opportunities to tell stories and to tell their story and share what they think is important, and listen. Don't just like nod and smile, but like really listen to what people are saying.
I'm nodding
it's
and
amazing.
Smiling.
Don't just nod and smile.
Yeah. I think that's such good advice. You see it in the business world all the time, like with Covey talking about seek first to understand, then to be understood. And we all want to sit up there and yell our rap song out or tell our story in this way or do this, but other people want that too. And listening, when your mouth is moving, you're not learning. When your ears are still listening, you got a chance to learn. So, and you're an educator too, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, that's in the museum field. That's, I'm not like a trained K-12 teacher or anything, but in the museum field, that's kind of what we call people who work in the informal education side of things.
Well, you've had a lot of educating that you've done to us. We've learned a lot from you. I really appreciate everything you've done for the Fledge with bringing StoryCorps. I think it gave us credibility with some people, because you had the big name behind you and all of that, and showed up and was professional and courteous, and everyone walked away with a great experience. So thanks again for doing that. And thanks for being on the show. The show, with just me, it gets boring. But you're so interesting, and, expanded our brain a little bit more with another way of looking at the world.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you, all of you at the Fledge, for working with the StoryCorps project, because it, like I said, was a two-way street. I'm glad that you got value out of it, but this relationship has been really amazing for us as well. So thank you for everything.
You're welcome. And we will talk soon. And everyone out there, I will see you, go the wrong way, later. See you, Sarah.
Bye.